All right, so the next thing we're going to cover is positioning and the power of self-appointment. So positioning is like how you see yourself positioned against the other guys in the market. So positioning for me is how I see myself against the other main 5 that I know are going to come up when I'm dealing with those sorts of leads. So I know the way I choose leads is kind of the way other companies choose leads and talk to people too. And I know that it's always going to end up in the consultation that they've talked to or they've been with like 5 guys. And when you're good, you'll realize that'll start to happen for you too. Has that happened to anyone already? That's a sign that you're not doing enough marketing. When you start really pushing hard, you know exactly what who the other guys are and what the decision is. And it really gets simple. Like with Snap Inspector, I know it's always going to end up with me and Happy Inspector. And so I got to know how I stack next to them. And when it comes to consulting, I know it's always going to be a couple of other companies. And I know exactly what their offerings are. I know what their price points are. I know their weak spots. I know, everything about them. You can't really prepare for it until you start getting into having these conversations and learning who these people are. If you don't know who they are, that's just a blatant sign that there's not enough volume, because that conversation, every good salesman knows who those people are. Does that make sense? So how do you position yourself well? Well, you first need to understand the other guys and their offerings. This isn't stuff you can really prepare for, but it's, this sort of stuff's important because you need to be perceived as an expert. People need to trust you, and you need to have a bit of authority, and you need some differentiation. So even if everything's good, and again you're missing these sorts of things, people don't see these sorts of things in you, then it's extra hard to get the deal. So perceived expert is that they see that you're an expert in these things. In the field of digital marketing, if you're going to do this sort of stuff, you've got to come across as an expert. You do that by understanding the products well and your mindset, thinking you are one as well. Then trust, that comes by the way you can talk, and authority, it's all kind of the same thing except for differentiation, which is how you stack against the other guys. Now, how to position yourself as an expert, no one ever comes, the biggest myth everyone ever has is that someone's going to come along at one point and label you as like an expert. And it doesn't really happen that way. It's self-appointment, right? Most guys do a bit and then they feel like they're an expert, and then they might say that they are, and then it just happens that way. I know with me, no one ever really came to me and said, "You're an expert." I said it to myself before that ever happened, and then when they say it, it reinforces it and you believe it more and stuff. So the only way to really position yourself as an expert is to self-appoint yourself as one. And how you do that is you learn the products and you work on your mindset and you really believe that you are good. Like when I'm on the phone and when I'm in the room with these guys or anything, I know that I'm good at the stuff. And the words that come out of my mouth and everything, that's one level, but on another level you can kind of smell that confidence. Does that make sense? Who thinks they have an issue with this stuff?
For sure. Tim Ferriss talked about that in his book too, and before our work group, about how to position yourself as an expert. And he talks about background. He has a couple of really good ways of doing it. He volunteered at university to maybe talk there, and then he put that back on his webpage, and he spoke at university, and he just had many ways of doing it.
Yeah. So a couple of actionable steps you can do, because you definitely need to learn about the products and you need to work on your mindset and believe that you are. But actionable steps, having your own report, like I have that, it's time for results report, that does a bit of positioning as an expert. When there's something that's like a published report and it has facts and things in it and your name's on it, that helps you gain a little bit of expert, whatever you call that, expertness. And then if you write your own monthly nurture mailings, that again helps position yourself as an expert. So if you're reporting on a little bit of what's happening in the market, a recent client, something that might be of benefit to them, if someone reads this, they'll be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy must be an expert. That doesn't really, it's not how people think. Someone doesn't come along and just say you're an expert and then you start writing the emails. It's kind of like you have to think you are first, do it, and then someone will tell it to you, and it will happen. Someone will say, you really know your stuff and you know what you're talking about. And as soon as they tell that to you, you'll be like, yeah, that's right. And then it kind of just stacks and goes crazy. And that's what I was telling you about with LeBron James and Elon Musk and stuff. They definitely thought they were smart or really good at sport or good at whatever they're doing. But as soon as someone else recognizes that and says that to them, it just snowballs. Because all of a sudden someone else is saying it, then you're saying it, and it just builds on each other. And I think actionable ways for you to do this is to take my report, but put your own spin on it and make it feel like you had some input into that. That way you'll feel proud of it. And write your own monthly nurture mailings and understand your products. And then one thing that really positions me well that I've realized recently is when I'm not the guy that makes the phone calls or schedules the appointments or does any of that stuff. Now, this isn't something you can just go replicate like when you're starting out, and I didn't do this when I was starting out, but it's another tactic to really have expert positioning, because the staff have all the conversations and everything and all the emails. They schedule the time, and then they say that Sam doesn't go out for meetings. There's a policy where they must be in his office, and they say, is he available at 2 on Friday? And they're like, no, he's only available at this time. It sounds counterintuitive, like you should just take any time and you should meet them anywhere, but it's not really like that. If you're going to book in to see a brain surgeon, you don't expect him to answer the phone, and you don't expect him to be like, oh, I can be there, I can come to your house in 30 minutes, all right? You'd expect to be on a waiting list for that guy, and you'd hope that he had an assistant or something. And generally people are willing to jump through hoops to get to experts. So that's another little tactic, but it's not one you can do right off the bat. Right off the bat, you can do your own report and your monthly nurture mailings and learn about the products. So little exercise, how are you going to position yourself? So what story or success can you leverage? So, I always say that I started a business from nothing in a garage and grew it to 7 figures. That's like part of a story, and I can mention other clients and stuff. I didn't have that when I started, but everyone I think has some little story that they can leverage a bit. Like you guys must have done something or have one client story, or everybody's got a story. You've been alive for long enough. So just think of something you could possibly leverage. And then by what date are you going to have your report done? So the report's in the Facebook group. It'll also be available with this course. And you should really change that around so that it feels like your own. What date are you going to have that done? And by what date are you going to start mailing nurture pieces? So a lot of you guys already have lists, because actually a few guys have mailed 100 or more. That's a really good opportunity to start the nurture mailing. So by what date are you going to get your first one out?
I think one thing that doesn't get brought up, or that people discard, is LinkedIn. So all of my clients, almost all of them, have commented on my LinkedIn. So and specifically looked at it and checked it out. So that's an opportunity to make yourself look really good, because you can just write it.
Yeah, I know that clients do look at that too, because you can see who looked at your profile. Yeah. So, and also on your website, the way you talk about yourself, you kind of want to build yourself up a bit, because that's what experts do. They're confident in themselves. You don't want to be too over the top, but you want to sound like you believe in yourself, because when you're sitting there with a guy that's got a problem, he wants to know that you believe in yourself, for one, because he's not going to trust someone that really is whimperish. Does that make sense? So the way you write about yourself, get some confidence in yourself, because really this is the only way experts get and athletes get to where they are. They have to tell it to themselves first, they appoint themselves, and then other people say it and it snowballs. And this is a cool goal I think everyone should have. By what date you're going to have an assistant?
What would you recommend?
I think as soon as you get 10 grand in monthly recurring revenue, you should get an assistant.
So what would that look like? Hiring someone to answer the phone?
I think that person would be doing the mailings. They would be doing the market intelligence sort of stuff, and they would be making the follow-up calls, and they'd be doing kind of the back office stuff, and they would be scheduling your consultations, doing things like that, handling accounts, things generally that experts don't do themselves, because that really does make a difference. Like the medical industry is very smart, the way they structure everything. Like when you want to see a specialist, you have to first be referred by a general practitioner. Does that work the same in America?
Yeah, that's based on insurance.
Really?
Yeah.
Same in Canada. You want to see a specialist, gotta go to GP first.
Yeah. So in New Zealand, like, everything's free, and we still do it that way. And I think it's probably the most powerful positioning tool, because whenever you want to see an expert, you've got to jump through these hoops, and then you finally you're able to talk to his assistant. His calendar's jammed for 3 months. Then there's this one time, and by the time you hear about that, if his price is like 5 grand, you don't care. That's why it's all like so good. But if you get him immediately and his price is 5 grand, I mean, you haven't been through that sort of process, and he's not built up to that level.
So how do busy business owners respond to that? Because that seems like it would be
You don't want to do something that extreme. That guy legitimately is booked, right? Like brain surgeons can't scale like we can scale this sort of stuff. So he legitimately would be booked. But we want to sort of take a little bit from that and apply it to ourselves. So you don't want to, you want to be flexible, but you don't want to be in a position where you feel like you're being treated like not an expert. The second you're not being treated like an expert, or you don't feel like one, you're probably doing something wrong. Like I've heard stories about guys driving 3 or 4 hours for a consultation. Like that's not an expert. I mean, sure, if it's a big deal and you really feel like it and that just has to happen, you do it. But this didn't even end up closing. Like the guy was like, I want to work with someone who's closer. And the guy had to drive all the way back. Like that's 8 hours there and back. Yeah. I wonder what song was playing on the way back. That's going to have some... That's definitely not the song he's going to listen to get pumped up.
Are you doing many webinars many consultations by webinar?
Not that many, because the beauty of where I am is Auckland's the main business area. So I'm in the main city, and where my office is like in the prime spot. So I can get away with targeting the local market, meeting with them face to face, and they can always come to me because I'm right in that perfect spot. Yeah. But that's just because I'm like that in my country. If you're not like that, then you're going to have to make use of phone and webinar, and you might have to go see people. I'm only able to have a face-to-face only sort of policy and make them come to me because it can work and it's not asking too much.
don't think like plumbers feel weird that you come into your office and do a consult?
No? They love it, man. The trade guys, because I got a big Harley in my office.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and honestly, like some of the guys in the office thought that was a bad move. They're like, you don't have a motorbike in your office, man. But all the clients come in and they're like, oh, that's so cool. And they're like, they ask questions about it. It's the coolest way to start the meeting, because it's always like something different and people remember different stuff. So I always try and make things real different, like the experience.
You can do that with if you're doing like a webinar or you do this on Skype, because you have a background for like the background and have you doing something crazy. And so that way it's instantly you just like, hey, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? So kind of like you with the helicopter picture. So
Yeah, well, it works. It like, you know, people remember stuff that's a little bit different. You don't want to do something that makes you look stupid, but you know, something a little bit different always works. And another thing is to kind of have a style too. A lot of people, one thing that works well with positioning and being an expert is every expert has a style. It's like, you know, basketball players, they've got a style of how they play. Golfers do. You know, Steve Jobs wore the same stuff and kind of talked that way. Everyone kind of has a style. Richard Branson. So work out like what your style is too, and you know, just build on that.
More details about that? Like, is this what you wear for your?
Yeah, or it might be like the way. It might be how you dress. Like, it might be the way the picture you have, the style you write in, the way you talk. Like, you're not going to fabricate it. It'll be kind of who you are. Just escalate it a little bit so that it's made into like a bit of a character. Do you know what I mean?
Would that be the same as like it's branding yourself?
Yeah. Because every expert is like that. They haven't completely made it up. It's who they were anyway, but it just gets turned into like their character. Like, I bet Steve Jobs just wore that, and then when it was turned into his kind of persona, he just built on it, right?
Well, you can get a designer design it.
His outfit.
Yeah, there's like a Japanese designer.
Seriously. Well, there you go. Maybe you could go get one of those. It's like for pretty much forever I just use the same photo of me, even though it's like back when I was about 19 or 20, just because people get used to that little picture. It's like that, it's consistent, and then the style of writing, this, you know, the voice, like people just get used to things like that.
So, what's it cost to get a good assistant in New Zealand?
So, I think you could, when you're at 10 grand, I don't know how much, you want someone full time, and I'd pay about 3,000 a month. You want someone good, and you want someone full time, because this really does get to the point where you need help, like with all this back office stuff.
Yeah.
You don't see this person as making those phone calls though.
Yeah, definitely.
Which phone calls?
Follow-ups. Not the follow-ups, the first ones. Over.
No, the follow-ups too, after mailings. You can follow up after consults, but everything before consult would be the assistant.
But that sales guy that's on commission on the original phone calls, we're not talking about the same person here.
Well, that's kind of who I'm talking about, but I think you can't jump right to that level now. Like, it's not a first step. That's kind of if you grow a bit bigger. But if I was to do this again, the second I got to 10 grand, I would have hired a female assistant, because of the manner that they can, you know, just a bubbly sort of personality. It's good for the calls, like we've done this research. It's good for the follow-ups. It's good for following up on invoices. And there's a lot of back office stuff. I would have, if I had to do this again at 10 grand, I would have spent 3 to have a full-time, bubbly personality female assistant, and I would have got her to do everything, and then I would do the consultations, send the proposals and things, and follow up after that. But all the other stuff I'd let her do.
But in New Zealand, do you pay like taxes on this? Like in France, if you pay someone free, Then you have to pay almost 3 to do the very muscle. It goes to like 6.
You have to pay $6,000 for 3 million. But you're gonna pay her.
So you have a what the hell?
Yeah.
That's true. It depends on the contractor.
There's a north.
Well, why are there any? So they make it attractive not to grow.
Oh yeah, big time.
It's really hard to
There's
do a
some
startup in Paris, right?
There's some.
I don't have anything for that.
So if you're delegating some of your marketing process to your assistant, do you want someone with a marketing background or like?
Not necessarily, because this is quite basic stuff, right? The following up, the qualifying them on the phone, that sort of stuff. They only really need sales experience if they're going to go into the consult and close the deal.
So would it pay to maybe find someone just part-time to like start just doing the calls? I mean, because at least that's...
If you can afford it, if you've already got revenue and you're willing to justify that, sure. But if you don't have anything, then it's still your choice. Right. I think we had some questions there. Let's jump on to salesmanship. So who thinks that they lack sales skills?
Could be better.
Cool. So when I say marketing, I typically mean even the phone, all of that stuff. Marketing, I consider everything until someone ends in the consultation, either in the room or on the phone or on a webinar. That's all marketing. The second they're in there, it's sales. That's what I consider sales to be. So when you've got the lead, they've been through all of that process, and now they're there. So beyond, like, the things that really work with sales is, someone needs to see you, someone needs to think that you're really sharp. So like on the ball, and you don't want to have a cloudy head. You've got to be sharp and know what you're talking about, and someone's really got to think, wow, that guy's like onto it. Does that make sense? It's hard for me to describe that. But you know how you meet some people and you're like, that guy is sharp. And then enthusiastic, some people honestly sound like, when you talk to them, they sound like they are depressed. And it doesn't even matter if what they're talking about is really exciting, you just aren't. You're just naturally down. And you generally don't, that's not good. You don't want to be really down and talking in a monotone and shoulders over and down like this. You want to be sharp, on the ball, and enthusiastic, like happy to be here, excited. And you want to be perceived as an expert and presented well. So you don't have to wear a suit, but pants and a dress shirt, and make an effort, like with your appearance if you're going to go somewhere. I really believe that this makes a difference. If you look at the best salesmen out there, they're generally pretty sharp and onto it, and they're presented well. I don't think it's right. Well, every culture is different, but for digital marketing, I think full-blown suit when you're small is a bit over the top and it's a bit too corporate-y.
When I first started, I came from finance, so I wore a suit without a tie, and then we were subleasing an accounting firm, and it worked fine. So, and then I switched to this, and it works fine too. So,
yeah, I don't think it's a huge difference, but you do want to look sharp. Like I meet with some guys, especially my contractors, so they're like smart and everything, but the first impression you get is the first time I met with them, I was like, oh my God, have I made a mistake? But just because they were wearing jandals, which are what do you guys call them? Thongs? Flip-flops? And just shorts, and they look just disheveled a bit, and I'm not judging them. I was still I still hired them. I didn't judge them, but that first impression wasn't good, and you can change that. They would. I guarantee you, if they had positioned themselves better, looked the part and spoken well with confidence and everything, that they would be much more successful. It's the main reason why they couldn't have that side of their business and they had to end up having a deal like this. We're not talking huge difference here, but if you can do it, which is very easy, it's not very hard to present yourself well, so you may as well do it. It's just like extra points you can get. So these are some things that I really think help a lot. Now this is what I believe is like the wrong way to do a consultation, and this is because I've seen lots of people do them. This is how they tend to go. So you meet with the person, you know there's about an hour, so in your mind you're like, well, I'll get in there, I'll just make small chat for a little bit, then get into some questions, then I'll give my best possible presentation, and about 10 minutes before the end I'll say, how does this sound? Do you reckon this is good? Who does like a consult and it follows this sort of pattern? How is anyone else's different?
I do multiple steps, and like the first one will just be in work.
But at what point do you kind of ask for like, does it get towards like, are you going to buy or not?
Literally in like meeting like 3, and they'll be like, oh, I mean at that point like it won't even like it'll just be like a natural conclusion to it. Like I barely even have to ask, and then they'll say like, hey, the next step, like I'll show you like a formal proposal and we'll go through it. Cool.
So what I've found, because I've done a lot now, so what I've found is the way I used to do it, there was lots of steps, but the close didn't really come to the end. Yeah. And when they have objections and questions, which they always do, I had kind of already given all I had, because I gave my best possible presentation. So then I didn't really have much ammunition left, nor time, because there's 10 minutes left. I'd already said everything about my company, just absolutely everything and what they should be doing, and I didn't really have much left, and they were like, oh, okay, cool, let's talk again soon, this is good, this has been good, and that's a bullshit ending. Let's talk again soon, this has been good, is like, oh, thanks for the entertainment, And so the right way to do it is start off with, the little bit of small talk, that's always good. Get into some questions, really discover everything in their business. Give a good presentation on what you do and how you can help and what they should be doing, but not your best one, only a small, light one, and then ask, like say, try and close it there. If you've got an hour, you want to try and be closing it like minute 18, early on, because the second that you ask for it is when it actually begins, because that's when they have their questions and you've saved your best shit for those questions. Before you're all the way over here and you got 10 minutes and you've blown your entire load, you got nothing, So this is the best way, and also that's the natural way that people are used to having consults. They're like listening and it's all nice, and in the last 10 minutes they're like, oh yeah, I've got to go to another meeting, this is good, that's their escape pattern. They know that the close will come like 2 minutes before the end. So it's real good to put it bang in here, because it's like a shock, and you've got 40 minutes or more to really get into it.
Wait, so are you saying there's no proposal now?
I'm saying that you pretty much, there has to be some documentation and signage, but I'm saying you pretty much have closed or not in the consult. The proposal doesn't really do any closing.
If you wait till then, it's too late.
Yeah. When someone's hot, you strike. Like, that's what I've learned. Because the way I used to teach it is say, oh yeah, this has been good, I'll go away, I'll think about it, I'll do all of this stuff, and then when you've cooled down and you're not interested again, I'll send it to you, and then waste like 2 weeks following up, see if you liked it. That's like kind of the old way. And I realized that a lot of people are ready, they're like, yeah, this is good, what's the step forward? And I said, well, just give me 4 days or something. And then they cool off and they didn't buy. You need to close them on the spot. The same thing happened when I did demos for Snap Inspect. If you showed someone a demo and they were all ready to buy, then what I used to do is be like, oh, okay, well, let's get you started on a free trial. They didn't need free trials. And recently with the software company that that I invested in help out, we just abolished their free trial process. They only have demos, and you can't use the software until you've paid, and it's just worked so well. If someone's ready to buy, you should try and get them closed in the, on the spot.
So how does this work compared to your to the consultation script that you gave us?
Pardon?
How does this work compared to the consultation script that you gave us? There was
So I'm not even going to give you guys a script for this. I'm going to show you how to do each process in different ways to have conversations, but there's so many variables here that, and I think I actually hurt people by giving them that script. Because I heard people were just reading it word for word and they had their head down and they even tripped up on their words and they just looked like idiots,
So when you get to the ask for the sale part, that implies that you have some sort of knowledge beforehand of what a good product is for them. So are you going to walk us through what you do to prepare before a consult?
Yep. So does this make sense compared to the wrong way and the right way? Does anyone do this? You've done that. Has it worked?
The thing that people don't realize is the selling doesn't start until you get to the objections.
Yeah. People think objections is like they've done something wrong.
No, that's when the selling starts.
Yeah.
And most people
And you want those objections. That's good. And that's why you save your best stuff for them. Mm.
So you bring your contract with you then to your consultation?
I know my prices. I want to start bringing contracts and get it signed. I want to do everything there. Right now I haven't had the time to organize that, but I pretty much get a verbal commitment and I know all the prices, so of course they can agree to them and yes, send it over, we'll get it sorted. Yeah. Ideally, I would have the contracts there. And that's the beauty of having products and having set prices, and because the way we used to do it, we kind of will think about it and pull a number out. And
I got hurt so many times because of that.
pardon?
I got hurt so many times because of that.
Yeah. So it works, but I've learned that there's a much better way to do this stuff.
So what's the whole process then from you sent out a lumpy, right? They got that lumpy. You followed up with them. You scheduled this consultation. You're doing all this
On the consult.
in the consult.
So a consult can never be less than half an hour. Ideally, you want an hour. It takes an hour to get a good sales piece done.
How much information do they have going into this meeting?
Well, they know that they're coming to talk about marketing. We know that they either have answered those questions. We know the answers to those questions. We've done a little bit of research because you should always look and have, before you go in. What do they know? Nothing. It's just that's the process.
Just sheep going in.
Well, no, they know what they're coming to talk about, and of course they know that there's going to be some sort of sale going on. They know that they're not completely stupid. These people own $1 million businesses, remember? And they can see that you're offering value, which they think's fair, and they know there's going to be a pitch of some sort. They're not blind to the fact that there's going to be something for sale.
And you've just been able to do this within 1 hour.
Sometimes it even goes over, but if I can't get someone's dedicated time for 40, I generally would need at least 40 minutes. I'd like to have an hour. If I can't get someone's dedicated time and they say they're in a rush and could we squeeze it in 20 or something, I'm like, no. That's not, I don't want someone who's going to be frantic. I want full attention.
I get all the way up to objections. What's the best presentation part of that? What is the best answer?
So let's go through it piece by piece in detail. So when you get in there, you say little something, like for me, it's like, how's your day been going? And, shake hands and have a little chat. Someone might ask about the motorbike. There's no real script for that stuff. You just have a little bit of chat, but you don't want that to go for any longer than about 2 minutes. If it seems like it's going to go that way, you should say, let's do it. Like, don't let it go that way. Experts and really good salespeople will never, ever, ever let it not go their way. Like, you want it to be going towards, you want to know that you're hitting those different pieces and going towards where you want to go. If he takes a conversation one way, you've got to pull it back. Who's had consults where they've gone real out? That's good. Oh, you have.
But I was conscious of the fact that I needed to lead it more, so I tried to rein it in, which, is partly some of Jordan Belford stuff and other salespeople, You can't get too out there. You have to, lead and control.
You have to lead. If he takes it and he turns it around and is controlling, it's bad.
Yeah, if the customer's in control, you're not.
I do it to people all the time when I'm buying stuff. Yeah. They start talking, I'm just like, no, so how much is it, what is it? And it's like, it's ruined for them, their pitch, you know what I mean? And I can always keep it my side, and I do it for fun and just... But you can't let that happen, because I just know that guy's not that good. So you have a little chat like that, then you say, let's get into it. The way I usually go about these consultations is I've got a few questions that I like to ask that really allows me to determine, what you need and what's really going to help you and what's going to make you successful online, something like that. And then you dive into the questions. And you should have your own ones. You don't have these are just, I just dumped like a whole bunch of questions here, and you can choose which ones you believe fit well with you. But the one question I always ask at the very beginning, like every single time, is, so tell me, you're here today, what made you want to come in? It allows me to get right to what they want so fast. Because they've come in, right? That's like 3 or 4 out of 100. Something made them drive there. Something made them come in and sit down and know that there's going to be a possible pitch. And that's probably the best piece of ammunition you've got. And right off the first question, I can get that.
Do you feel you have this information before they come in? The answers to these things?
No, definitely not.
Okay, so you're actually learning that all in one.
Yeah, this first question is so powerful for me. You've got to get used to asking these in your style too. But I would use that question. So the rest of them are kind of like, optional, but I would definitely start with that. Because someone did it to me once and I couldn't believe it. Like it was so fast. Because you think about it, you can see how it makes complete sense, right? So they say, this has been done with so-and-so, and like this has been done with so-and-so, and we haven't had any success or anything like that. And then they say, what we really want is just someone that can do this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be easy. But you get exactly what they want, like straight up front, immediately. It's such a good question.
So you're saying the people that show up are like 1 in 300?
Well, remember you've mailed, say, like 100 people, right? And I said consults, you'll probably only get like 4, 5, 6.
So really the people that are showing up to your office are the people that you bump into that are genuinely interested in a solution. I think that's not to be kind of glossed over, because I think so when I was selling at retail for commission, you'd get that one customer that would buy pretty much whatever you put in front of them, and that's really what we're trying to find in the volume prospecting, is those people that are truly interested in what you have to sell, and are not price sensitive and are amenable to kind of giving the reins over to you.
Well, in retail, how many people come through and just look and just walk out, right? Then that one comes and it's like,
Yeah, all the time.
the best salesmen aren't the ones that give the best pitch to every single person and are just exhausted at the end of the day. They've got probably one question that can just tell them if it's that person or not. So a few more of these questions could be, what do you want to achieve? How are you currently doing X? Which could be, how are you currently getting customers? Or how are you currently doing SEO? Who's managing it? Is that working well for you? Is the immediate question that I have after how are you currently doing something? And then, do you think it could be done better is my next one. So that's kind of my three layer sort of piece to, I want to know how they're doing something, then I want to know if it's working well or not, and then I want to know if they think it can be done better or not. It's always, that little 3 thing works well. And you have to be writing this stuff down. It can't just be pure memory. You want to have a pad, and you just want to just, not detailed like verbatim answer, you just want to kind of just find that pain, or find what they're here for.
You're recording too.
The consultation. I never say I'm recording it, but generally I would record it. Not every single time. It's a good habit too.
How do you do it?
Times I've done it's phone, voice record. Yeah. Never say, hey look, is it okay if I record this? It's like, that's real put off. You know?
What do you say?
I don't say anything.
I'll just do it.
Yeah. And then you can't obviously ever use that for anything other than your own tweaking of your pitch, right? Because that's not very ethical to then go and put that places.
I also found what works well when you write it down is you're writing down things that they're saying, then you say it back to them later. And then just rephrase their own words.
Yeah, so you pick up on their language. So when a plumber starts talking about what's it called, the hot water cylinder jobs, you can see the excitement in his face when he talks about those, because it's just pure profit, and that's just all profit. Like the best, when they get one of those, it's just money. Whereas there's some jobs that they don't like so much. So you pick up on that, and that's the sort of piece. You don't say when you get jobs. You could say, when you get hot water cylinder jobs, because that really excites him. So it's good to, gathering information should take, there's no set time because you can't move past this until you actually have the information. It could take 10 minutes, it could take up to 20. It shouldn't really take more than 20 minutes, but the problem is you can't even move on to the next piece if you don't understand this. This is so important. You need to know their current situation and where they're at. You really need to understand that. And a lot of the time, and why the first question isn't bulletproof is that a lot of the time someone will come in and they don't even know quite what they want. And you have to find out what they want. So I've had guys come in and they say something and it's very muddy, like, you're interested in, just improving our digital marketing. I haven't been given it on the first, on a silver platter, really, that's nothing. So I have to dig in. And then they find out they have 3 different parts to their business. They find out that they're a franchise, and they have franchisees, so then their objective with digital marketing, is it to get more franchisees, or is it to sell more is it to sort of bundle in to help sell the franchise packages? Are they going to be doing it for all of them? These are the details you need to do a good pitch. If I asked him, so tell me, what made you come in here today? And he said, well, we want to improve our digital marketing. I don't write that down and smile, and I'm like, I've got this. That's not what I need. I need the details. Sometimes you'll get it off the bat. And there's even more questions you can ask. So if someone's with their current provider, you can play with this a lot. So if someone's with a provider, it does not mean that they can't be sold to. That's got to be the biggest myth in the world. I think most children get a bank account when they're about 6, 7 years old, like their parents open them one and put like $5 in it. the banks don't look at that person and think, oh, he's with another provider, like that business is gone. Like, people move all the time. They change phone providers, they change banks, they change so many things. If someone's with someone, it does not mean they're staying there forever. So never, ever, ever think that because someone's with a provider that it's not business and you've got to move on to the next person. Sometimes the best market is someone that's disgruntled with what they currently got. I mean, look at what happened with Facebook. There was like MySpace and stuff. It happens with everything. One of my developers said that he would never, ever, ever use a Mac. And he always coded on a PC. And then he got an iPhone and he kind of liked it. And now he's got a Mac. And he swore that he would never get one. You know, like anyone can move. It can happen like that. So you can say, if they're with a current provider, you can ask them what they like about it and what they don't like about it. You can ask them, what would you change or improve with what's happening right now? What's your biggest headache with something? What's your ultimate objective with SEO, with digital marketing, you know? Any questions on these?
Just curious if it matters, in your opinion, if you're writing down versus typing?
I would never bring a laptop into a consultation. It is just not very personal. Yeah.
Well, what about using tools and stuff? I know you said sometimes you'll use espionage, like in the actual console.
So if I had the laptop in, it's closed, and I am looking at the person. Yeah. So I do have a laptop, but it is not open in front of me, and so I have a pad. Like even if I have meetings and someone's on a laptop, I'm like, turn that fucking thing off. Like, I'm not going to talk when that's there because I don't know what's on it. It looks like you're more interested in that. Yeah.
So before in your process, you really stress the importance of like figuring out their desire and then going like 2-3 levels to figure out the ultimate objective. Are you kind of glossing over that now?
No, it's just. It's not like if you can get that, that's great, but it's not necessary to really force. And that was the problem with the script, because I think people believed they needed that third level to go on, and they freaked a lot of people out. So sometimes you can naturally get people to say things, and it's not essential. What is essential is that you understand everything about their current situation and you know what sort of presentation you're going to give, because your presentation varies. And what I always like to say is something like this. Okay, so what I'm hearing is, and then you're doing this, this, and this, but it's not working, and you're not happy with it, and you think it can be improved, and the way you believe it can be improved is through this. Then they're like, if they nod and they look at you and really say, yes, that's it, like more than, and they're excited that you've really understood the current situation, that's like proof that you can move on to the next point. Another thing you can ask is, if you've got, say, 4 things or 5 key things, you can say, okay, so what I'm hearing is you want to do this, you list out the 4, you've got the 4, and then you confirm that that's it, and then you want to ask, out of all of these factors, what's the most important one? So I've had one real recently, one that just immediately jumps to mind, is a guy that owned 2 companies that were kind of under the same company, but the company had 2 sides. One was software and one was consulting. And when he came in and I asked him what he wanted, it sounded like he kind of wanted to do digital marketing for both, and he also wanted to redo like a website, and he wanted to do like a whole bunch of shit. And it was, if we were going to get into a presentation, I didn't really know what the point of that was to really dive into. I didn't know if I should be talking about this part of the business or this one, or And the way I said it is, okay, so you've told me this, but what's really most pressing? What is most important to you out of all of these things? What do you need to get done, like, now? You need to find out, once you've got the things, you need to understand what one's most urgent. Another thing you can say is, have I understood every detail about what's important to you about this? So you don't need to ask all of these questions. You'd find one that you're most comfortable with. At this point, you have to ask that you say what you think. Like, you've got an image, clear image in your head of exactly what his situation is and what he wants. You've got to repeat that back to him, and he's got to confirm that you've got it. If you don't understand it, it's impossible to move past here, really.